What is up, everybody? This is Big Mike from foos4trading.com. It is January 20th, a Saturday. Just hanging out, enjoying the weekend. I wanted to throw out some content for you guys to study over the weekend. And the main stock that I want to talk about that was a pretty big runner from Friday was Ford, F-O-R-D. So kind of looking at the daily chart, former runner. This thing has definitely made pretty explosive moves in the past, and is also a low float, roughly 6 to 7 million shares. So definitely fits the day trading criteria for what we look for on a daily basis. The catalyst for the move on Friday was that they had purchased a company, and the deals of the acquisition were somewhat friendly for Ford. It's not like they were issuing a ton of stock. They had some cash in the bank, issued a little bit of debt, but this company is not, compared to a lot of other shorts that we like to hammer, not as financially troubled as most. So that was kind of one takeaway that I got from doing a little bit of due diligence going into the open. But again, because this was a former runner, and being a low float, these are the types of stocks that can really see those, 200-300% moves intraday. And we've seen this stock in particular make moves like this before. Now looking at pre-market, you can see that this thing was basically consolidating. Over the daily chart, you had a lot of support at about over $2. So once it was pretty indicative that if we held that level, maybe you would get some type of push to the upside. So you can see pre-market, a lot of choppiness, collapsed, below 2 very briefly, and then instantly reclaimed it. And right into the open, we got this major push towards $3. Now looking at the daily chart, obviously a lot of resistance in this 320 area, and this stock was basically trading at about $1 to $1.40 before today. So it was basically doubled. So going into the open, I was looking for the short for the over-under. Ended up entering at about 285, and played this nice move down to about 240 where I covered half. It was up pretty nicely. Unfortunately, was a little bit greedy because the pre-market breakout zone was about 230. So once we held that going into the open, guys, that is a very good example of what was initially resistance becoming support and doing that switch that can be a counter trend reversal. So we got basically the bounce near 230. And in my opinion, I think this was just loaded with so many shorts right out of the open that this is why you got this really incredible squeeze that basically went almost $2 within a very short period of time. And if you weren't watching the level 2, if you weren't watching the tape, thankfully I was, and exited half my short at about 290. Took a small loss, but did give back most of my gains. But thankfully cut my loss short and avoided this huge squeeze all the way up to as high as 450. Again, looking at the bigger picture on the daily chart, you're really max resistance is at this 450, and then it's really all the way up to 5 or 6. So it's no coincidence it topped out there. But this was definitely a tough stock to read, guys. If you were watching the level 2 in the morning, it was one of the more crazier level 2s that we've seen in 2018. And then once we peaked out over 4, this was probably the time to hammer the short. But again, it was pretty tough. Once we got this stuff at about 430, we were literally down to 370, roughly a 20% drop within a 1-minute candle. So definitely super volatile, and it was not easy to get in on your shorts at ideal entry points. Once we cracked 4, I was looking to short off of possibly 380 to 390, but you can see we never really got there. We tapped 380 very briefly, and then just kept on chopping around. And a little bit of takeaway, I recommend that a lot of our students really get familiar with reading the tape and watching the level 2. This is something that's more difficult to teach, and is much easier for you to experience on your own. When I first started trading, watching the level 2, I was very overwhelmed at first. How am I going to learn this? And 2-3 years later, it's second nature. That's how you're really going to learn and be able to grasp the personality of each stock, what the trading action is like, where the tricks are, the fake bids, the fake offers, whatever it may be. This is how you really can become in tune with each particular stock, guys, is by staring at that level 2 all day. And the level 2 on Ford was very manipulated. A lot of fake bids, fake offers. And from a short seller standpoint, it was very difficult to get in with size because you never had too many fat bids, to really slam to get in with any size. So it was definitely a very difficult stock to gauge and, more importantly, to trade. Then once we got this really nice crack, you can see we had this little channel, and then basically had a nice little bear flag. So then I was looking to basically short pops, risking off of high a day at about, not high a day, at about 370. Was looking to get in the 350s, risking 20 cents to play the move back down to 3, but was only able to get filled right here at about 235. I got filled some, and then you can see we get this one last retest of the VWAP, and then we just crashed. Again, watching the level 2 all day, looking at the price action, you could almost tell that this move was coming. It was just whether or not you had the discipline to hold through a lot of this chop. But very clearly defined resistance between 345 to 350. That was a zone you could have worked off of, risking 20 cents off of about 370. And again, just a difficult stock to read, but once we did get the crack, it had a really nice washout to about 280 where I got most of my covers, and end of day ended up bouncing back towards 3. So definitely we'll be watching this going into Monday, guys, but it was just a really good example of, because Friday there was not many movers, I think a lot of people were gravitated towards this because it was so crowded. It made it a very difficult stock to gauge. And more importantly, the way the level 2 was a very telltale sign that even though stocks can be manipulated, it doesn't mean that you can't make money in the manipulated stocks. It just means that you need to be able to identify that manipulation and trade in accordance with how it is acting. Because Ford was very manipulated and you had a lot of fake offers, fake bids showing up, it was much easier to basically have a game plan beforehand and get in with size by providing liquidity, as opposed to nailing the bid once you kind of saw weakness, because it was very indicative on the level 2 that anytime it looked like the trend was going to reverse, you'd have these bids step in. Anytime it looked like that it was going to, rip up higher, you had these offers step in. So it was just a really good example of gauging the tape and trading the action in accordance with the personality of the stock. So we'll definitely be watching this going into Monday. This market has just been on fire, and there's been stocks to trade on a daily basis. So please feel free to join us in chat and watch us trade live every morning. Hope everybody enjoys the weekend.